7 o'clock. I love that gavel. That just really makes me feel like we're conducting this in a business-like way. So I guess we need a roll call, please.
Commissioner Arata?
Present.
Commissioner Bajaj?
Present.
Commissioner Funabashi?
Present.
Commissioner Nafisi? Commissioner Beely? Absent. Commissioner Sao? Absent. Chair Simpson?
I am here. Okay, let's salute the flag. Commissioner Bajaj, can you lead us, please?
All right. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the agenda before us. Are we content with the order of the agenda? Can someone make a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the order of agenda.
And we get a second?
Second.
And I think we can do that with a voice vote.
Aye.
And just for the record, Commissioner Sao is here at 7:01.
Okay. And so can we
Voice vote.
have a vote on the approving the order of the agenda? All those in favor, I guess, can say aye.
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 Opposed? One opposed, so the agenda order is approved. Blue folder items. Do we have any blue folder items? I believe you sent some out this afternoon, so we've received those.
Correct. For J2?
Okay, do we need a motion to accept those, or are they
Right, we need a motion to receive and file.
okay? Would someone care to make a motion to receive and file the blue folder items?
I'll make a motion to receive and file.
Okay, Commissioner Fisi, we have a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's obviously adopted. This is the consent calendar items that, is there anything there that anyone would like to pull out and discuss separately, or are we content to just take a motion and pass that as a consent calendar item?
If I may, I was going to abstain on the following approval of those meetings from the minutes, I should say. I was not able to review those and So we'd simply abstain for that one portion.
Do we need to pull that out separately so you can abstain then, or is that? I don't think we do. I think we can just, you can abstain on the whole thing.
Okay.
I think that probably would work. All right, is there any comment on the consent calendar? Seeing no comment. Any e-comments on the consent calendar?
Let me just double check. There are no e-comments on the consent calendar.
Okay, I guess let's take a motion then to approve the consent calendar. Would someone care to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Commissioner Sue makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Harada seconds. All those in favor of the consent calendar?
Aye.
With one abstention.
Abstention, and I on the rest of it. Okay. So we've taken care of item G. Item H, this is a time when if you have something that you want to talk to the commission about, anything at all except things that are on the agenda. It's on the agenda. We'll hear your remarks and comments when we get that agenda item. Does anyone have any comments on non-agenda items that they'd like to talk to us about? I thought I heard that there was one, but am I mistaken?
You can, or, what is it? If you would like to just come up, you can come up at this time. Nope, okay.
Oh, guess not. Okay, so we're now moving on to item J1, which is discussion and possible action regarding changes to curbside parking restrictions associated with the 2400 Artesia Boulevard redevelopment project, which I guess is known as the Grub House. So we have a presentation on that, I suppose?
Yes, we do. If you could pull up my slides. Good evening, Commission and Chair Simpson. The first item we have tonight is the curb space management plan for the 2400 Artesia project, or Grub House. Curb space management meaning, what we do with the curbs that are along the project. This is a rendering that was provided by the project applicant. As you can see, on the left here is Artesia Boulevard, and at the intersection of McKay Lane on the southeast corner. This project is sort of like a food hall that will be mostly in-person dining, some pickup. There will be some level of food app delivery services available. And so what we're looking at here is, debating and, discussing what we do with the curb space that's in front of this site. This is the project's site plan. We're going to go into more detail in sections 1 and 2. Section 1 being the curb space along the project frontage on Artesia Boulevard. The second being the frontage along McKay Lane. This project will be served by one driveway on McKay Lane that will serve underground parking. A lot of the activity is expected to happen on using that driveway into the underground parking. But we do expect some level of on-street activity due to convenience. So on the Artesia side, we talked to Torrance Transit, and they require 80 feet for their bus stop, so that will be marked red. In front of that, the project developer is proposing to remove 3 current parking spaces on Artesia along their frontage and convert that to a daytime loading zone, 70 feet long, which should be able to fit the longest semi-truck. The proposed hours for that loading space will be Monday to Saturday, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Saturday. After those hours, they're proposing 20-minute short-term parking hours from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. So the purpose of the daytime loading space is to provide a space for the truck to load since they cannot go underground. And this prevents loading in the traffic lanes, in the residential areas. And after the daytime loading is over, then it turns over to provide 20-minute spaces for people wanting to do pickup or take out food, really to encourage the turnover of those spaces to maximize the efficiency of that space. On the McKay side, so Artesia is towards the right. Towards the left of this image is the project's driveway on McKay, where the applicant is requesting 20 feet of yellow curb right in front of their, to the north of their driveway. It's near the entrance of their back of house. So they're anticipating smaller van loading type, this space is not long enough for a truck. The applicant also says that this loading space, because it's, for transit vans, smaller vehicles, it won't be as loud. It will be a quieter loading space. They're also requesting the same hours for this 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and then reverting to one short-term parking space from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. The city is taking the opportunity to do a little bit of restriping on McKay to provide additional space for turns coming in from Artesia. So as it currently stands now, there's only a 10-foot wide opening for the southbound lane on McKay. We're proposing to shift the center line over a little bit, just like we did along Grant Avenue, to provide a little bit more space for cars and trucks turning into McKay. So you can see here the lanes kind of shifting over to the east or down on the image. Within this transition zone, staff and the applicant came up with some pretty interesting ideas to use this space. So at this time, we're proposing 3 short-term motorcycle parking spaces. These types of spaces can fit motorcycles, mopeds, e-bikes. There will be bike parking on site, but the intent of these spaces is hopefully over time, food delivery services can be using these smaller format vehicles, and providing a convenient place for them to park will prevent them from using full-size parking spaces elsewhere. And it's in a space that wouldn't be able to fit a full-size car anyways. So we're proposing 20-minute spaces here from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday, 7 days a week for motorcycles only, 3 of those spaces. And outside those hours after 10 p.m., then that's when residents can park there overnight. That's when we revert back to normal parking hours. So these types of changes are under the purview of the Public Works and Sustainability Commission. This was actually a condition of approval from the Planning Commission as approval of this project. We're happy to answer any questions, and we also have the project applicant, Stephen, available to answer any questions as well.
Anyone have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Brzezowski.
Yeah, just curious about the commercial loading zone. Is 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. currently the standardized hours in the city's municipal code, or is it going to be something special? And if so, will it be signed appropriately for very clear messaging?
That will actually be something we're going to be addressing in item 3 tonight.
Oh,
is the language in our municipal code that currently doesn't allow a lot of flexibility for specific times for loading zones and short-term parking zones. We're proposing to change the municipal code language in item 3 later tonight to allow for that flexibility. And, when we have specific time periods, we will always put a sign with the specific times that those limits are in effect.
Other questions, comments? I have a question for the developer. When are you going to be finished there? That seems to me it's been a hole in the ground now for a long, long time.
It's a great question. Good evening, Commission.
Good evening.
Thanks for having us. Well, is that working? Oh, great. Or I can shorten myself, or does that shorten me, or does that raise the mic? Great question. We are currently waiting on our building permit. So we took a long time to get it entitled through planning. That was in December of 22. And we've been, from that point on, we submitted Q2 of 23, and we're now still waiting. It's been through 2 rounds of comments, and it's anything but a straight line to get there.
Okay, so once that's approved and how long is it going to take to finish the project?
We're targeting about 15 months.
About 15 months, so a year and a half
We
from
have
now or so,
our
maybe?
fingers crossed for late summer 25.
Right.
But lot to be done, a lot of boxes to check to get there, but that's our goal.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, one more question, I guess, for city staff. Do you have this combination of commercial loading zone and 20-minute parking anywhere else in the city? And I guess it's leading to, is 20-minute, does that provide a lot of room for abuse? I know the intention is to provide very quick turnover for the DoorDash drivers and the Postmates. Is 20-minute a little bit too long?
That was something we discussed with the applicant. No, we do not have a zone that's, daytime yellow curb and nighttime green curb. We were, thinking about how to stripe the curb color. We cannot do yellow and green curb alternating. That would be confusing. We're going to propose yellow curb because that's really the zone that's the most critical need
Right.
during the day to make sure that people are not parking there that are not loading, because we really need that space for the trucks as the applicant is requesting. In terms of 20 minutes, I think it's a debate between what's enough time for someone to go and perhaps order and wait for their food and to go, versus, someone who might be a delivery driver who's waiting for an order and just sort of sits there for a long time, which we don't want happening. We want those spaces to be for people who, they're showing up to pick up their order, there's a space available, they're able to take it, get their food and leave.
Yeah.
We did discuss some other times, and the commission is, certainly, it's been within their purview to propose a different time other than 20 minutes. But 20 minutes is what Stephen is requesting.
Yeah. I mean, if that's what, you feel works best. I know the city of Los Angeles, they did 10-minute food pickup zones, like, when food delivery really blew up, like especially during the pandemic and so forth, they utilized the 10-minute limit. I mean, whatever works best. I mean,
Well, I'm happy to respond if you're open to that. 20 minutes is the sweet spot.
Okay.
When it comes to picking up food to go. We're not building our model around delivery apps coming in and picking up food. There will be a small component of that. Yes, of course there will be. But it's for the neighborhood and customers that are picking up their own food to go, right? We want to encourage quick turnover. There's nothing more than we want is people to come in, do what they need to do and leave. We're creating 42 car parking in the neighborhood underground for people that want to be on site, right? So the other kind of side to that component is we are encouraging people to order prior to showing up through our own ecosystem ordering and not coming on site, ordering, waiting for 20 minutes and leaving. But it's been proven time and time again, 20 minutes is really that sweet spot for somebody to come in for the different scenarios that I just presented.
Got it.
To do what they need to do and leave. So we don't want people to come in, certainly stay there longer than that.
Right.
We need the spaces available.
Other questions?
I have a quick question. Obviously, City of Redondo, we're excited about this. Is kind of innovative. A lot of other cities like Long Beach, they have these type of things. So I understand it's a dine-in experience, but is there going to be like commissary kitchens or ghost kitchens operated out of here for operators who are just doing delivery-owned businesses? Because we're seeing that pop up a lot, and obviously that's going to create some bottlenecks in traffic.
Correct. There are those in the neighborhood or in town, but none of the concepts or food operators will be delivery only. They will be all primarily for dine-in.
I don't know.
Delivery will be a nice addition for periods that are slower, but not to get too much in the weeds on the model, but when there are busy dine-in hours, those apps are turned off.
Gotcha.
Right? So there won't be this complexity and friction between delivery and dine-in and takeout. Our perfect world is they rely on delivery outside of our dine-in or customers that are picking up their own food as little as possible. So that's how our model is designed. Will there be off-site delivery? Of course there will be.
Okay.
Hopefully that.
I just had one question, if I may. I haven't had a chance to study the site plan, but looking at the two up McKay and also on Artesia, where is the entrance? Where would those deliveries be hand trucked from the truck to the kitchens?
So deliveries of provisions and things coming on site. So there's two entrances to the sort of the back of house, and
Yes,
a
I'm with you.
little additional color is we've designed this intentionally to separate front of house and back of house, so you don't get a lot of that friction you do at brick and mortar restaurants. You've got deliveries and pickup and delivery drivers and customers all kind of colliding in the same footprint. These are very much clearly bifurcated. So on McKay, there's an entrance on the very top right that gets you into that long, tall gray building that comes right into the kitchens. So literally on the other side of the sidewalk is the entrance that they would come off of the Artesia delivery zone. And then down below where we have the 20-foot van delivery, there's a gate that goes right into the back of house, right along sort of the bottom left and goes right into the back.
Perfect. Yeah,
So
and
they're literally within feet of each other, which
Okay.
is why we kind of worked with Ryan to kind of design it this way.
Sure. Yeah, it's just like, obviously not trucking stuff across the sidewalk around the corner either way or the other. And
That's exactly what we don't want.
yes, okay,
We
thank you.
do not want customers to see the deliveries as much as possible. And just the general public, there's, brick and mortars, they park the truck, they block a lane, they throw down the lift gate, they're, carting stuff around. You go to see a food delivery in Santa Monica. It's exactly why we've designed it this way.
Here, here.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? So just to make it clear, when we're being asked to approve this plan if we think it makes sense, is that right?
That's correct. So just like, red curb requests that we've dealt with in the past, this is to, approve these changes to the curb, and
Right.
they will be striped and signed when the project is under construction.
Okay. Anybody have
Question to
any?
the city. No parking existing right now on McKay.
Yes, actually, that's another point we'd like to make, is that on the McKay frontage, the existing site has 2 driveways, and so you can't park in those places. So we're actually, thinking about what to use with this newly created space on McKay. On Artesia, it will be a conversion of 3 existing parking spaces.
So because there's no parking there, it's not really impacting any residential parking? in those
That's
areas?
correct.
Because I know you guys did notify the general residents, and I'm just curious what came about from the notification.
Yes, so we're not making any changes to McKay, on the striping or the parking south of the project limits, south of the project lot. And we sent notifications to anyone within 200 feet of this project's address.
So what we're being asked is for a motion to approve this if we think, or to make suggested changes. Yes.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the plan as proposed.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
See? Yeah, do we have any public, well, there's the motion to do that, but do we have any
You can still
public
have
comment?
comment, yeah. Or discussion.
We don't have anybody who's turned in a card for this, but anyone
Okay.
who would like to speak?
Is there any,
And there's no e-comments.
no e-comments? Okay, see no comments, then let's move to take the vote. Let's make this a roll call vote, I think.
So, but if anyone wanted to speak, they're more than welcome to come on up on this item.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so,
So we have a motion that's already been presented.
Right, okay, so we'll do a voice vote. Ready?
yes, please.
Commissioner Arata?
Aye.
Commissioner Bajaj?
Yes.
Commissioner Funabashi?
Aye.
Commissioner Nafisi?
Aye.
Commissioner Sao?
Aye.
Chair Simpson?
Aye.
All right. J2?
Okay, J2, I guess we're going to discuss truck route enforcement and potential changes to truck routes within the city.
Very good. I'll introduce this item and then I'll hand it to Ryan to get into the detail. But we've received some requests from residents as well as concerns from council members about stray trucks in our city, especially the southern part of our city. We're bringing this item forward not with a recommendation at this point, but with some alternatives to be considered for your input and the public input. The goal here is to create a enforceable and workable plan. Part of the problem right now is trucks entering the city, especially from Torrance, are on legal truck routes in that city, but when they reach our city border, the truck route ceases to exist. And what they do at that point is right now hard to control because we don't have a designated truck route for them. So the introduction of truck routes could route them in the directions we do want them and keep them off of residential streets and smaller streets. So that's what we're bringing before you tonight. We do have members of our police department here for questions, as well as our city attorney's office representative to ask questions of her as well. And I know we've had a lot of public input on this as you've been presented in the blue folder item. And I'm going to give it to Ryan to go through the details of the options that we brought forward.
Sure. So this issue, as Andy mentioned, arises primarily from truck routes that start in the city of Torrance. These are specifically Del Amo Boulevard, which becomes Del Amo Street, Sepulveda Boulevard, which becomes Camino Real, and Palos Verdes Boulevard, which continues through the city. And sort of Prospect kind of connects all those streets as the major thoroughfare that's on the eastern edge of the city. We'd also like to note that Palos Verdes Boulevard is the primary street to serve one of the primary streets to serve the Palos Verdes Peninsula. There's only 5 total access points in the peninsula. Palos Verdes Boulevard is the first one. The next one is all the way down to Hawthorne Boulevard. The geography is such that Torrance actually borders Palos Verdes Boulevard on both sides of the city, south to PCH and east to Prospect, and they are truck routes in the city of Torrance. In terms of the California Vehicle Code, the California Vehicle Code allows cities to establish truck routes. However, there is a provision in the Vehicle Code that allows trucks to travel on restricted streets, so streets that prohibit trucks, if their final destination is on that particular street, or say like a street like Alberta, if someone is trying to deliver materials to a home renovation or to a business in that area, then they are allowed to travel on that street. We'd like to note that, and the police department will speak more to this, that technically police can enforce the truck route laws within the city of Redondo Beach. However, there may be issues with prosecuting these and having these cases stand up in court because there are no routes that exist for trucks to go down, where we're not setting the truckers up for success because the truck route ends at the city border. So this map here generally shows a map of the city's truck routes as well as truck routes in other cities. So the red and purple routes are truck routes within Redondo Beach. You'll note that this dotted line is the truck route on 190th and Anita Street. That is actually a conditional truck route, no trucks over 10 tons or 20,000 pounds because of the 14 to 15% grade. And that's been signed all over in Redondo Beach and Torrance. As you move south, these blue routes are truck routes in Torrance. And within Redondo Beach, in the south of 190th Street, the only truck route is PCH and Torrance Boulevard. We're going to zoom in closer to these truck routes in South Redondo. Del Amo Boulevard, Torrance Boulevard. Torrance Boulevard does continue, and that's the truck route, east-west truck route through the area. But the other truck routes, as you can see, have a gap within the city. City staff, we've actually reached out to the city of Torrance at the staff level to see if they're willing to remove their truck routes west of Anza. We reached out to them twice and they refused. They said there was no political will to modify truck routes within their city. So these dead-end truck routes create enforcement challenges because a truck is traveling on the street. They have every legal right to do so. Once they reach the city border, they're technically not allowed to travel on those streets anymore, and there's no way for them to turn around because all these streets have medians or are not wide enough to accommodate a truck making a U-turn. And so that's why it may be difficult to enforce these rules. I'd like to invite up the police department to speak in more detail about how enforcement works for these commercial vehicles.
Good evening, Chairperson and Commissioners. Joe Hoffman, Chief of Police for Redondo Beach PD. So I brought a couple of our experts that deal with this directly, but I also wanted to let you know that I will be available if there's any specific questions concerning policy, deployment strategies, or the way that we're addressing this from not just the aspect of going and conducting enforcement, but also looking at all the reasonable alternatives to make sure we have a long-term solution here. So we do have one officer on the department that is trained to do commercial enforcement. And so he can speak more specific about what's required in order to do these types of enforcement, whether it's weight or the truck route, and also some of the legal challenges that we are concerned with after talking to the court and other police officers. And we've also met with the city attorney. And also some of the signage issues and the signage limitations because of the inability to post signage on the state routes, Pacific Coast Highway, and also the way that the signage is directing people that are going on a truck route to turn off of Sepulveda onto Palos Verdes Boulevard. There's actually an arrow directing them onto a truck route there. So there are some situations like that. So I'd like to invite up Officer Doug Westfall, who is a member of our traffic unit, normally rides a motorcycle, but he is also the officer on the Redondo Beach PD that is certified in commercial enforcement.
Good evening. So some of the issues that we have in doing enforcement on these commercial vehicles is, number one, you need training in order to recognize which vehicles are subject to which regulations. That training is available. It's a 40-hour school that the CHP puts on up in Fairfield, I believe is where they currently do it. So it's very immersive, I would say. And it's not you just go there, you get a certificate because you showed up. You actually have to pass a test because there is a lot of legality issues in doing enforcement on these trucks. Aside from that, when you go through that school, one of the things they teach you is they're not teaching you about the rules necessarily, they're teaching you about the exceptions to the rules. So there may be a rule of, hey, here's a truck route, here's the route that trucks are supposed to take. Now we're going to show you all the rules that are written into the vehicle code and everything you have to take into account in order to write a ticket for this, because maybe XYZ applies. A lot of these truck route rules, they don't apply to buses, they don't apply to dump trucks, they don't apply to emergency vehicles. So you have to know what you're looking at. Again, that goes back to training. Signage is another big issue. If I were to write someone a ticket for speed because they passed a speed limit sign that said 35 miles an hour, and then they entered a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and there was no sign there or saying, hey, here's a zone coming up where the speed is going to be lowered, a judge would throw that out because of the signage issue. That's the biggest issue we have on PV Boulevard is the border of the city begins where there's no truck route, and there's no signage at a place that would allow a truck to say, hey, I can't go there. Let me turn around. Let me find a different route. There is also the issue of finding out where these vehicles are going. Anytime I do a stop on a commercial vehicle, it's not a 2-minute conversation. It could be somewhere where I'm on that stop for 10 minutes and it's basically simple, all the way up to an hour and a half because I have to wait for a heavy-duty tow to come out to tow a truck because it's not supposed to be operating for one reason or another. And that's where you get into the training and experience where you need to know what you're looking at. The average patrol officer is not going to know, looking at a truck without any training, if that truck is supposed to be on a truck route or if it can go off the truck route.
Questions? Do we ask questions now, I guess? Questions?
Yeah, I think if there's any questions specifically about enforcement, and then once we get through that, then we have
Yeah,
another slide.
I have one here. I mean, you said that there was a problem, I think, in Palos Verdes of not having signs.
So the issue that I've ran into with what the truckers have told me and the commercial vehicles that I've stopped
Right.
is at the intersection of Sepulveda and Palos Verdes Boulevard, there is a truck route sign that is typically posted at intersections, right, saying, hey, the truck route continues westbound, northbound, and southbound, southbound being Palos Verdes Boulevard. Well, Palos Verdes Boulevard goes for a few blocks, and then it hits our border. And then that's about a block from Prospect. And
When
that
it
would
hits
be-
our border, then that's no longer the truck route.
Correct.
So to add to that, actually, it's every single of these blue truck routes. At all the major intersections, there are truck route signs that point truck drivers to go forward, left, or right, depending on how it's oriented on the map. And so if someone is going westbound on Del Amo, they will see the truck route going forward, left on Anza, or right on Anza. And then that's when, it's only once they reach the border of our city, then it says no trucks.
So, but the problem then is that they can come down and then they reach our border and then they're illegal if they come across the border.
Yes, because it's a truck route in Torrance. And so these signs are in Torrance.
And we don't have basically a turnaround option there at our border for them to not go into our city where they're not supposed to be on that route.
You know, is this, it looks to me as though Torrance Boulevard is in fact a truck route.
Torrance Boulevard is a truck route, yes.
Okay, that's
And that's our truck route as well.
our truck route.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Can you tell me how many tickets you typically issue for trucks that not issue them because it's unwinnable?
It varies. I've explained this to my supervisors. I may stop a truck for a possible issue for being overweight, but in my investigation might be, hey, they're coming from somewhere on Alberta, Avenue D, Avenue G. They're coming from somewhere where they have a legal reason to be, which puts them into that exemption where they can travel off truck route. And then I find other issues. So I wouldn't write them a ticket for that, or I find other issues that are a bigger thing with equipment on the truck, where I'm not going to write them a warning citation for being off the truck route and an actual citation for something that's safety-wise.
I have a question. Does it seem that signage would make us the most defensible or empower you to write the citation? And the reason I ask that is I envision, let's say a delivery truck comes off the hill coming down PV Boulevard. They hit our Pacific Coast Highway. They either have to make a left or a right, but I imagine, and that's quite a little dip before you go up into the neighborhood there. But that's Torrance. How do we put a sign on the Torrance side that says coming up, you have to make a left or a right? Coming in from Del Amo, if we wanted to make them turn north or south on Anza, we'd have, again, signage in the city of Torrance to tell them in a mile, you're going to hit Prospect. And so it almost seems like they're able to come up to Prospect. We might need to come up with some way that if they're going to come right up to our border and hit Prospect on 3 of these, then we've got to, you see them coming in on Del Amo, you can't make a right and head back up to 190th and Anita. We've got to kind of direct them over to Torrance. So I have a lot of questions about signage and what that's all about.
On Palos Verdes Boulevard, as you're approaching northbound coming off the hill, we do have a no truck sign that's not on the state highway system. So right after the PCH intersection, that's where we are able to put our no truck sign. So there is a sign there. However, we have a lot of trouble trying to put our own signs on state highways.
And how do we put them on another city's road? I don't see that really.
With their permission.
With their permission.
Which we've asked for and received no response to.
Isn't the heart of the problem here that what we really would like to see is Torrance drop 2 of these truck routes that
Perhaps, yes, that's the long-term solution. Now, for the northbound truck route on Palos Verdes Boulevard, we could ask Torrance to say, hey, they can put a truck route with the left and right arrow to show that there is no truck route in Redondo Beach. But from the other direction, closer to Anza, if to ask them to, tell the truckers to turn would mean removing the truck route, which as we tried with their staff, we were not able to get them to remove the truck routes.
The only other question, a follow-up that I have is, and I'm not familiar with what the requirements are for commercial licenses, commercial drivers. Are they required to know what the maps are? And it seems like some truckers are knowing that, where we don't have one and they just go as far as they can and are probably using this system to drive into our city on routes that aren't approved. So
Depending on how in-depth it is, the smaller box trucks that you would see that might weigh 15,000 pounds, those drivers typically I found are using like Google Maps to navigate to where they need to get to, which there is no truck route setting on Google Maps. The larger trucks typically have routes preset, which should be off of a truck route. And then also if you start getting into what are called extra legal loads, which exceed the maximum state weight, length, height, or width, those, for most cities, they have to have a permit for like if you have a load that weighs more than 80,000 pounds, to move that on the highway, you have to get a permit from Caltrans. And then you would have to get a permit from every city to that your route would take you through, and you would have to have that mapped out, because if they get caught off route with that, those fines are huge. The other issue we have in enforcement besides signage is, depending on the judge, they might want a little bit more than, hey, I used the manufacturer's weight rating to say that this truck weighs more than 6,000 pounds. Some judges actually want to see, well, what was the weight of the truck at the time? So they want to, hey, I took scales and I weighed this truck. And scales are an issue because they're heavy. They weigh probably about 40 to 50 pounds a piece. And they're also about $10,000 to $15,000 a piece. And to do any work, you need at least 2 plus a spare. And I can't carry that stuff on my motorcycle.
Of course. Okay. Lastly, in terms of whatever data you might have, do we have a certain size vehicle that is the biggest violator, for lack of a better term? I mean, I'm aware like 2-axle, 3-axle. I mean, that's probably an observation. Number of tires, whatever identifying information there might be on the box or the trailer. I'm just wondering if there's one particular size truck that we might be able to focus in on and remove the biggest offenders,
I mean, it would.
in your opinion.
From what I have seen out there, it's usually these smaller delivery trucks, like the box trucks, which are also the same size as like the moving trucks. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between a gardening truck that is taking waste from some sort of gardening project or whatever, someone's U-Haul that they rented from some smaller company that doesn't have all the markings, and a delivery truck that just didn't put markings on their truck.
Yeah, and if it's a moving van, it could go on any street where there's a house. I mean,
Correct.
that's the legal exemption, right? That allows them, and whether they're bringing a full truckload of furnishings, and or they're done for the day and the trailer's empty.
Yes.
Right,
So,
that would-
I mean, basically, it's any vehicle over 6,000 pounds that's commercial.
Yeah.
So that would be tow trucks, wouldn't be able to go on any of these routes legally. Box trucks, any kind of delivery truck, like a tractor trailer. Technically, the contractor trucks that you would see with the toolboxes on the sides, or on the sides of it, those would wind up being over 6,000 pounds just because of the weight of the truck plus all the equipment that they're carrying. They're carrying tools which are generally very heavy. So that would put those trucks over 6,000 pounds. So that's the challenges in doing this stuff too, is
Yeah.
I have to kind of sit there and be, okay, what would I stop for doing this? What would I be able to prove?
Yeah.
Because once it gets to court, it's whatever they're going to say to the judge versus whatever I say, and what the judge's expectation for the evidence that I have to uphold the ticket.
Sure, and now the way you elaborate more, it seems like there could be someone with AAA wanting that tow truck to come to their house. Now, I presume that would be an exemption.
That would be an exemption.
But for you to have to figure it out, I guess what I really want to drill down into is this was publicly led. So if we could somehow find some testimony of the truck that is offending one of our neighbors that, or group of neighbors that have brought this, maybe that's what we focus on.
I believe the biggest complaint I've heard is there are tractor trailers that come onto PV Boulevard, which I have seen from time to time. Those are the ones that I make the biggest effort to stop. And again, that depends on where they're going, because if they're making a delivery into that shopping center that's right there at Palos Verdes Boulevard and PCH,
Right.
the Smart and Final and whatnot, that's a route that they could take there, depending on where they're coming from.
Should we continue with the rest of the
Yeah.
presentation? I think.
Thank you.
So based on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So based on what they're saying is that the enforcement is difficult. There's a lot of exemptions
Right.
and there's a lot
That's the
of
part.
difficulties with, and especially compounded with this truck route map where there are dead end truck routes and truckers are legally able to travel on these streets in Torrance. And then they're not set up for success or provided a way out to continue doing legal things. They have no choice, but when they enter our city is to drive on streets that are not legal for them. So I would imagine that in the best case scenario is to get Torrance to remove these truck routes, possibly up to Anza. But if there is any single truck route that dead ends in Redondo Beach, we're going to have trouble enforcing those. And that's why we have this map here that shows all the different street segments, because there could be a case where Torrance, I can't speak for what they will do. They might take away all the truck routes. They might take away none of them. They might take away some of them. But if we have a dead-end truck route entering Redondo Beach, it will be difficult to enforce that because they have nowhere else to go. And so that's why, we're happy to answer any questions and let the public
So what you're
weigh in on
doing,
that.
you're proposing this 1, 2, and 3 on Prospect Avenue, making that part of.
So let me just jump in. We're not proposing anything yet, just so the audience is clear. We are really just highlighting alternatives that we could consider. These 4 segments kind of connect the dots between the dead end to focus truck traffic on these routes especially. It eliminates excuses for truck drivers to be on Diamond, for instance, or further up the road on Camino Real or some of the other streets that they might choose to take. Practically speaking, if you're a truck driver on Del Amo and you reach our city boundary, and if you're forced to turn left to get to the nearest truck route, why not sign it that way, just so we make them go that way? And similar arguments could be made coming off of Sepulveda, Camino Real. One would hope that if we could appeal to Torrance to remove at least one of these, maybe the Palos Verdes Boulevard in their city could be removed, and then we have a better chance of eliminating that routing through Palos Verdes Boulevard. But these are all just alternatives to look at, to gather input on. We're trying to solve this in a way that is, we can use all the tools we have, especially enforcement, to keep trucks where we want them and out of places we don't want them. And understanding that these are not all desirable by everybody, but they may be the best of a bad set of options.
Are these observations based on the most frequent violations of the trucks that have entered our city? Meaning, they can go down Torrance all the way through to PCH. They're probably taking Nob Hill, PV. Where are we seeing these trucks?
Well, I
going
think
through?
the trucks violate our truck rules probably everywhere.
Everywhere, right, yeah.
What we're trying to do is solve these dead end issues, especially because those are locations where trucks are being funneled into our city on legal routes. And so we're trying to address this. We don't have as much of an issue in the north part of the city because our routes east-west tend to be continuous, but they're not here. And that's part of the reason we're bringing this up for a conversation, to see what solutions we might have.
Okay. Yes.
I just have a couple questions. So, for Officer Westfall, how many trucks do you pull over on an average? And I'll let you start about that. How many trucks would you say that you pull over on an average, and out of, let's say, per day or monthly, how many do you average pull over versus how many that you actually cite? And I don't know, how do the truckers know where they can and can't drive other than the signage? Is there some, place they can go to get the data?
So I'll start with the last part first. The requirements for licensing does get into where you can and cannot go. But if you're driving a vehicle that has 2 axles and you are under 26,000 pounds, you can drive that with a regular Class C license. There's no special school or anything that you have to go to. Once you get to 3 axles or you go over 26,000 pounds, that's where you have to have a Class B license. And that's where you start getting the stuff from the DMV on, hey, truck route and whatnot. So that's the other issue that I run into is a lot of times the smaller box truck drivers they're just driving with the regular Class C. They have no idea because there's nothing that tells them, hey, you can't do this. They're trusting the company that's telling them, hey, you're going to go this door, this door, this door, and follow Google Maps. And to me, it's unfair in my eyes to hold these drivers accountable for something that their company is telling them to do. As far as how many tickets I write, that depends on where I am for the day, what all I'm looking for. I'm not primarily just commercial enforcement. I'm looking at a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of stuff I can't carry on my motorcycle to do actual commercial enforcement full time. But it depends on what I see and what people tell me when I talk to them. Because commercial enforcement is nothing as clear as, hey, I got you on LiDAR doing 55 in the 35 zone. It's a lot of questions. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? What do you have in the back? Do you have this paperwork? Do you have this paperwork? And everything that they say yes to usually opens up a lot more stuff. And there's a lot of information to be considered before saying, okay, I'm going to write a ticket for this. There's stuff that I will write warning citations for just because it's, okay, hey, you're kind of borderline on what you're telling me, but I'm going to err in the caution that if I take this in front of a judge, the judge is going to say, okay, yeah, this is, I don't know why you wrote this ticket. This seems reasonable. So there's a reasonable test anytime I'm doing enforcement on this. So I can never say when I pull someone over if I'm going to be issuing a ticket. If I sit on PV Boulevard, I've had it where I've pulled over 6 trucks inside of an hour. And I've also had it where I've sat there for 45 minutes and I haven't seen anything I would pull over for commercial enforcement. So it's hard to narrow it down to, yes, I can write this many citations or I can pull over this many trucks in this amount of time. It's always what I'm looking at and what I can say, okay, yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We also have staff from the city attorney's office here for any, if you have any questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know that you cited there was no political will. Obviously, there wouldn't be any political will from Torrance. There's no Torrance people complaining. But that was from staff, right? So staff connected to staff. Has there been any efforts to educate or tell our city council to reach out to Torrance City Council to have that connection? Or we just reached out to staff and we're like, oh, no one followed up and that was it.
This is the first step in that process. We'll certainly take the recommendation here to the District 1 and 2 council members especially are paying attention to where this issue.
Okay, wait, for us to make the recommendation for you guys?
I mean, that could be part of your
Okay.
recommendation
So
that we.
what are you asking us to recommend? I'm a little, to whether this is an appropriate solution or, I mean,
So
More than selecting a particular solution, we would certainly love to hear from the public about these ideas. We'd love to hear from the commission about
just the idea
how to move
is-
forward.
And as I understand it right now, the concern is that you have 3 dead end, they're not dead end, but dead end
They are
truck
dead
routes.
end.
And Torrance won't cooperate. And so your solutions are to make truck routes where they do not now exist, which would be all along Prospect. Is that
That
your
is an
proposal?
idea. There's also a do nothing idea. The public is.
Elevated to council.
Right, the public has documented that there are plenty of trucks using these routes already, so do nothing doesn't really solve anything for us. It just leaves us in the existing condition. We certainly won't move forward with any decision about truck routes without going through the council. But it's been, I mean, the
So in
Torrance,
other words, you're asking for us to possibly make a recommendation to council about perhaps implementing this?
having heard public input, what does the commission advise the staff
All right.
in this matter?
So if these routes are the ones that trucks are violating and they're taking, how has the impact been on schools? There's 3 schools along these lanes, right? And that's obviously a hazard. By making them an alternative, or for schools, we're possibly encouraging them, to continue this flow. And I think that's, a reasonable issue that we have to deal with and face here, because that's.
Yeah, that, we do acknowledge that. That's, some of these options go through schools. But I think the bottom line is that if the existence of these dead-end truck routes means that it's very difficult to enforce.
Right. Right now, they're getting to a no man's land.
Sure,
There's
sure.
no
They're taking these routes
structure.
anyways,
And
right?
then we
Yeah.
don't have really a lot of enforcement capabilities. So,
Okay, so, yes.
I have a question just because we're brainstorming here on this, and I'm not quite sure if it relates to the route, but I suppose it could. Is there any way that these trucks can, register with the city of Redondo and have like some sticker so that they, are legal to be on the streets, or that clearly shows, whatever they're made of, to make it so if they do get pulled over, it's not just a waste of whatever.
I don't know that the city has the authority to license or either vehicles or drivers in that way. I'll maybe defer to the city attorney if she thinks otherwise, but our city deputies, there she is. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so that's the presentation. You're sort of saying, we've got a problem.
know.
Here are some possible solutions. What do you think about it? Am I getting that right? Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, I suspect that the public is here because a lot of them have thoughts about this proposed solution.
yeah.
So why don't we hear from some of what the public thinks, and then we can decide what we're going to do.
I'll start with Scott Crowell and then John Pritchard.
If you'd like to speak, you need to fill out a card, correct? And then you'll be called in the order that they're received?
That would be, this is the priority, then you don't have to fill up a card, you can come on up at the end.
Got it.
But this will be who speaks first.
Thank you.
So this appears to be a City of Torrance issue, in that they've extended their truck routes to our city limits with no way of turning the trucks back around. First, I want to address Prospect. Using Prospect to connect PCH is not feasible because of the residents, plus between 190th and PCH, there are 6 schools they'll be passing, both public and private. We already have congestion in the mornings and evenings with parents picking up. As far as Palos Verde, using that, we already have a problem not stopping completely at the stop signs. I live on Avenue G. Sometimes it's almost impossible to get across. I've tried working with the city to get an additional stop sign, and the neighbors don't want it. As far as the PV, it's 6 blocks from the closest commercial zone in Torrance. There's no reason for them to be running trucks that far down. So my recommendation is for this city to get with that city and say, you need to fix your truck routes. Unfortunately, in this part of California, we're a patchwork of cities. And they've got a way to get to PCH without going through us. They need to figure out how to use it and not use us as a backdoor. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Pritchard. Hopefully I'm saying that right.
Yeah, hi, good evening. My name's John Pershland. My wife and I both live, I guess we do, 1303 South Prospect Avenue. Just a quick comment. I'm really disappointed more effort wasn't made to get people alerted about this meeting. I understood 1,500 letters were supposed to go out and they didn't. I had a lot of people tell me they didn't know anything about this meeting. In any event, my neighbor Tony McGann and I, which is over there, we did a little study about truck traffic on Palos Verdes Boulevard. We put up a video camera for 2 days, actually 3. Our study resulted in 336 total trucks on Palos Verdes Boulevard for an average of 112 a day. On March 21st, I did more study on truck traffic at the intersection of PV Boulevard and Prospect. I recorded 150 tractor trailers and large delivery trucks. That makes an average of 112 a day. I felt like I lived on Anaheim Boulevard down in Harbor City. There are 3 schools within a half a mile of each other on these routes. There are 6 or more main crossings to get to the schools. We already have an issue with cars blowing through stop signs at these intersections. Cars and motorcycles race up and down both of these boulevards. There are kids on e-bikes dodging in and out of traffic and going through stop signs. We do not need to add tractor trailers into this mix. The school kids should not feel like they have to cross 110 freeway to get to class. Living on the corner of Prospect and PV Boulevard, we are getting double whammy. We go to pull out of our driveway and a tractor trailer is making a right turn down Prospect Avenue towards Toledo School. At 3:55 in the morning, we have noisy tractor trailers coming down Palos Verdes Boulevard. Car carriers, full cars making turns on PV Boulevard and Prospect. Trucks stop at the red light next to our property all day long with their squeaky brakes, smelly exhaust, noisy takeoffs. Things on our house rattle when these trucks drive by. And many of them surely are not going to 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. In closing, I request that the city will enforce the truck routes that we've defined, and please enforce them and consider our quality of life over Torrance's want to encroach into our neighborhood with their truck traffic. A comment about the map. It seems to me the truck company should have a map of our truck routes. Seems to me the truck drivers should have a map of our routes. And if you stop them and say, okay, gonna let you go, but here's a route map, and you have to adhere to it. I have seen tractor trailers come down PV Boulevard next to our house, and I go, no, this, and I get this, okay? I'm sorry, didn't mean that to you, but that's how they feel. There's a sign on PV Boulevard at PCH that says no trucks over 3 tons, and they constantly come down the street. There's nothing to deliver between PCH and Torrance Boulevard on PV Boulevard that requires many of these trucks to be on that route. I'm finished. Thank you for your time.
We have Marilyn Bravicevich and then Janet Johnson.
Good evening. I wanted to say that I've lived on Prospect Avenue, right across from John, and PV Boulevard, second house from the corner. And the noise factor, the traffic, the trucks, everything, the speed, it's just unreal. And I've lived there since 1966, so I've seen a lot of changes. The street widened on both Prospect and PV Boulevard. Legato, that's a bit of an eyesore, and it's going to cause more traffic. So, we're contending with all this, and I don't think it's fair to the residents. And it pretty much spoils our little community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Janet Johnson. I'm an owner of a 4-unit building, and I live with the tenants on Barbara Street, and it's 3 doors from Prospect. So I've been there for 33 years, and it's gotten a lot different over the last few years. Currently, the morning and evening rush hour traffic on Prospect is busy and noisy. Auto traffic already makes it difficult to turn onto Prospect Avenue from neighborhood streets without traffic lights. So we just have a stop sign, and it's impossible sometimes. Prospect Avenue has acted as a vital artery serving the many long-standing cultural sites that are either on or near Prospect Avenue. A truck route would create congestion negatively affecting residents who frequent these sites, each listed from Burrell at the north to PCH. For churches, we have South Bay Adventist, Center for Spiritual Living, St. Catherine Greek, Mormon LDS, Temple Menorah, South Bay Bible Center, St. Lawrence Martyr Catholic Church. That's more than 3, I've counted them. And schools, Redondo High School, Paris Middle School, Bishop Montgomery High School, Alta Vista Elementary, Montessori School, and Toledo Elementary. Sports, Paris Middle School field is AYSO, and Redondo Union High School sports fields. Alta Vista AYSO and ball fields, and tennis courts there, which I play at. Hospitals, Beach Cities Health Center and UCLA Health. Residents of South Redondo Beach deserve to have easy access to all of the vital sites listed above. All have been accessible in the past and present, but not so in the future if Prospect Avenue becomes a truck route. Please find a less intrusive route for the truck traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Sheldon Luenthus and then Brad Waller.
Hi. Hello. Good evening. My name is Sheldon Loonfuss. I live on Avenue F in Palos Verdes Boulevard. I've been a resident for a number of years. I just want to point out that some of the truck routes that were shown here on the screen, they're much larger streets that have, 3, 4 lanes, where Palos Verdes and Prospect, but basically 2 lanes on each side. So as far as the depth, it's much less. Secondly, we already have a lot of traffic coming through the area. And with the project that's going to be opening one day on the corner of Palos Verdes Boulevard and PCH, it's going to add additional traffic. So I think by having a legal way for trucks to come through, it's going to create a lot more density for the neighborhood, which is, I enjoy the private residential neighborhood that we have, and I like to try to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Public Works Commissioners. Feels like a GPAC mini reunion here. My name is Brad Waller. I live in District 1, and I have lived either on Prospect or within a block of Prospect for, I believe, 37 years. We already deal, where I am a block away now, I can hear the already speeding cars, the loud motorcycles, the illegal mini bikes, and the trucks that are already using Prospect. Sounds like the heart of the problem is really communication with the city of Torrance. It sounds like their staff is not interested, and then that means it's a job for our city manager and our elected officials to work on this. So I urge you to make a recommendation to the city council and city manager to work with their counterparts in the city of Torrance to remove the truck routes that dead end into our city, and that solves this whole problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Mary Claire Skellen and then Daniel Reichser.
Hello, I'm Mary Claire Scanlon. I'm a 20-year resident of Redondo Beach. I live on Messina Court, which is very close to Toledo, just off Prospect. And I think everybody here has communicated pretty effectively the reasons why we don't need more congestion on our already very, very congested roads, especially, I would point out, around Toledo from Palos Verdes to PCH on Prospect is especially congested. And as everybody's pointed out, a similar situation is going to be happening soon with the opening of that large development on Palos Verdes. I agree with Mr. Waller that the problem here is really, the problem is with Torrance and the boundaries, and that we need to escalate it to the city council and the city manager. And where there is no political will now, then it's on us to create that political will through our city council and through our city manager, and maybe an effective communications campaign. And I sympathize with the police department about not being able to ticket the ones that are coming through. But I do not take the point that because they're already coming through, we should just make that the road. Because I think we're opening the floodgates then. We really need to push back on this. So I urge you to do that and to escalate this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel, please stay, if you can help me too.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Reish, and I've lived on the 1400 block of South Irena It's a little dead end right there next to Toledo. Since, well, I lived there when I was a kid, 1973. And there were two parts that I want to bring up. One was the safety aspect and one was the solution. And I can really only speak about my area of Redondo because I don't know what's further north. But as far as the safety aspect, we have Toledo School there. We have multiple crossing guards and a bajillion people. And these children aren't only dropped off at the school or picked up at the school in the morning, but they're picked up throughout the neighborhood. So these kids are walking across both Palos Verdes Boulevard and Prospect. And that creates definitely a dangerous situation because we already know that we have people that roll those stop signs consistently. I mean, you could stand out there and see it for hours. So that safety aspect, I'm sure, has been rehashed. But this gentleman over here, as a possible solution, had mentioned approaching the city of Torrance of eliminating the truck route on Sepulveda from Anza over to where it ends, and also, I believe, from Anza on Sepulveda where it continues up. So Sepulveda, Palos Verdes Boulevard meets off of Sepulveda and it comes across and then it dead ends at Prospect, and that's the truck route. There's also a truck route that comes up Sepulveda, continues up, I believe, Camino Real, and ends at Prospect. He had mentioned that they had approached Torrance about eliminating the truck route starting at Anza. And I can understand Torrance's pushback from that because there are a couple of large businesses on Palos Verdes Boulevard and Sepulveda. There's a big Ace Hardware store and there's definitely a gas station there that needs a big rig truck to feed it. So my thought is a solution that might be easier to propose to Torrance, because there are no businesses that are within that area beyond Palos Verdes Boulevard if you're going west on Sepulveda, and obviously there aren't any on Palos Verdes until you get over to PCH. Rather than asking them to eliminate this truck route from Anza, it would make a lot more sense to me, and they might be much more willing to do this if you eliminated the truck route from Palos Verdes Boulevard continuing west on Sepulveda, because that just ends up over there by Alta Vista. Any businesses beyond that are going to be down at PCH. They can be serviced off of PCH. And then if you eliminated it on Palos Verdes Boulevard, starting at Anza up to Prospect, that would still allow them to service that Chevron fuel station on the corner there and the Ace Hardware store. And there's a large commercial alley behind Ace Hardware, and I think it's a Goodwill and a Dollar Tree that those trucks could use to turn around to come back out on Palos Verdes Boulevard and continue back east again on Sepulveda. So that's my suggestion. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That is it for the cards.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ross Stressenberg, District 1. Well, this sucks. This is not a good solution to anything. Looking at the map, the proposed 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, bad because of schools. I definitely agree with that. My kids in those schools, I drive that route every day. The thing that hasn't been brought up that I would really think about is the proliferation of bikes and e-bikes, especially e-bikes. I'll only say it that last time. I don't want to say that word again, but they are there everywhere. And trucks and bikes just don't mix well. The visibility is not that great. The noise, the size, everything about it is worse than your regular passenger vehicles. I would consider that, especially along Prospect, and even PV has considerable kids on bikes and adults as well. But that aspect had not been brought up, but just the fact of even proposing this, it would make it worse than it is now if we were to even consider making them potential truck routes, because what you allow, you encourage. And I know enforcement is not the way out of this. You can't enforce your way out of a problem like this, but at least the opportunity is there and it can help the situation. We can put more effort to that is, if there's a wherewithal to do that. But I would really consider the aspect of the type and mix of traffic along those streets. The character of the streets coming in from Torrance, it really changes at the Redondo border. Those streets are far more commercial. You take PV, for example, as once you get past the hardware store and the Goodwill and everything that's there, it becomes residential and purely residential in Redondo. It's not that way in Torrance. I get the Torrance map. I don't know what the opportunities would be to work with them to try and reroute things. It would seem like a better route would be to stop them at Anza, send them south to PCH there. And then if they want to continue on PV into the Palos Verdes area. But putting them on Prospect and PV is definitely not the way to go with this. Not a good call at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Carmichael, Public Safety, District 5. First things first, I want to thank you all for both acknowledging and appreciating the problem that's being brought before you. In recognition of the agenda item being discussion, also appreciate you allowing us to talk it through. I would encourage you not to get stuck into we got to fix it tonight, because I think that would erode trust in this body. So I just want to throw that in front of you. There's a lot that we can suggest. There's a lot that we can want. There's a lot that we can assert. But I would appreciate it if you'll take seriously that you're a deliberative body and deliberate and come back with something that we can all, at the very least, get behind. And if there's anything that we as a community can do, feel free to reach out to us and let us know, hey, this is our water's edge. This is as far as we can go, but here are the things that you can do, even if that is also reaching out to our city council persons and with specific language as how they can action and move forward as well. Thank you all for, very comprehensive and a lot of work. I know that we're not easy to deal with, but we definitely appreciate you guys taking the opportunity to listen to us and to discuss it at length and show your participation as well. So have a good night.
Thank you. Other public comment? Seeing S.
Good evening. I'm Alan Kleinbaum. I'm actually one of the public safety commissioners. And this isn't just a problem at the streets that you've discussed. It's all over the city. I live a block from Torrance and Pacific Coast Highway, and I have truck traffic a block from my house 24/7. And they come down Torrance Boulevard or they go up and down PCH and they make a turn onto Torrance Boulevard all the time, and there's noise there too. And so that's something that you need to consider as well. It's not just isolated to one area of the city. And then I was told that the city staff approached the city of Torrance and they can't get a response from the city of Torrance. That's just ridiculous. Okay, that should be escalated to their management, the city manager, and the city manager should be able to get the attention of the appropriate staff in the city of Torrance. And if the city manager can't do that, then we should replace the city manager because that's his job. And so it's to take responsibility for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
We just ask that you introduce yourself.
My name is Ray Delgin, and I'm representing my wife, myself, Maureen. And we moved to Redondo Beach about 8 months ago. And all I want to say is that Palos Verdes Boulevard, when you're trying to cross it, people have to basically run across the street when they try to cross it. I mean, literally. I see, and I won't cross it anymore. I totally go around the other way. But when you're crossing it, as you're crossing it, I see people, they have to start, they start walking. Even with kids, kid doesn't matter. And you see the cars or the trucks just, as soon as they get over, they're not out of the street yet, they go around them. And all I'm saying is that's what it's like now. I mean, these people have no patience. And it seems like they don't value life. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments? Seeing none, what do we need to do here?
We do have one participant on Zoom that would like to speak. Nancy Skiba.
Good evening, commission members. I'm Nancy Skiba from District 4, and I'm a public safety commissioner also. It seems to me that they would be able to drive from Torrance along 190th or PCH all the way up, and they can intersect with Hawthorne, where there's a lot of markets, grocery stores and drugstores and things they could be delivering to. And that it would take them out of those residential streets and, kind of alleviate some of this problem over on PV. There's just not as many houses on PCH coming up from Hawthorne area or Madison or any of those. It might be an idea, and then they could get these trucks over to the Vons and all these other stores that are just scattered all over the place there. I just think it's the saddest story that these people in that neighborhood are suffering with all of this, and it's very hazardous. So I hope that we can reach some kind of a solution. But I thank you very much for looking into it and allowing us to speak on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments, any comments? That's okay.
The other person on Zoom has not raised their hand. We do have 11 e-comments. 2 are neutral and the other 9 are opposed, but I think you have a hand up in the audience.
Hello, my name is Ann Latner, and I thank you very much that you're going to take the opportunity to possibly present a solution with the other council members of Torrance to see if we can come to a resolution. They've created a problem that they need to be a participant in the solution. Many people have spoken about how many children there are on, especially on Palos Verdes Boulevard. I'm a docent there for 2 of the schools. I see children crossing all the time, even without a crossing guard. And it's enough of a problem now just with regular traffic, much more or less huge trucks coming down there, barreling down, and not even able to see them. And a lot of times these kids are in the crosswalk, a foot or 2 in the crosswalk, and cars are still turning into the street. So I just thank you for taking a moment to maybe come to a solution that might work for a problem that we didn't create. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hello. My name is Angela. I didn't prepare to speak today. I echo just about every single person's experience living close to a large intersection. I'm close to Diamond PCH. By 4:30, 5 a.m. in the morning, I can hear the trucks go by. That's early in the morning, and that continues throughout the day. And then we get like 50-foot-long lumber trucks driving through Diamond, down the hill, passing Redondo Union High. There's a lot of mass with those trucks, and there's a lot of speed. There's a lot of velocity that's built up to it, so it's not safe. But based on everything I'm hearing, I think we're a long way from a long-term solution. So do we also want to consider some short-term interim solutions, such as working with regular trucking companies, regular offenders, basically, to see if they can, work with the city, work with the residents to avoid, rude hours, things like that. I mean, I'll leave it up to the smart people, but it sounds like we're a long way from a long-term solution, so maybe some interim solution should be entertained. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've heard very interesting comments from.
I'd like to say something.
Sorry. You're good.
Oh, I just want to say something. I think everyone's right. I mean, the city of Redondo Beach has inherited clearly a Torrance problem, and they've clearly, kicked this can down the road. swept this under a rug, and we have to support, I think, our voice of our residents, protect our school-going children. I think by making alternatives and accommodations, we're just acquiescing to them continue to kick the can down the road, right? And making it a problem that we have to solve. So I think we have to fight back strongly. We have to be very resilient and persistent in our ability to try to uncover any legal means necessary or recourse that perhaps we can address this with Torrance. I understand this is a delicate balancing act between safety, traffic, and obviously reducing any enforcement burdens on our city. But what legal actions or recourse do we have in terms of dealing with the city of Torrance, their council, city manager, to continuously address this and not just make accommodations?
Let's get that answer.
Perfect person.
Hi.
Good evening, Joy Ford, Quality of Life Prosecutor for Redondo Beach. The city of Torrance does have a right to designate their streets as truck routes. So it's not something we can file a lawsuit against them for. So it is a policy matter that the policymakers do have to agree on and figure out among themselves. And I agree, Torrance is the problem. They have created a problem for our residents and our students and our children, and that is the focus of this issue, but it's not something that we have a legal recourse against them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. I understand that from the legal side. I think recommending our council to do something in terms of approaching their council, having some conversations, dealing with city manager, I think those are the things that are the next options that we can try to.
Commissioner Nafisi.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I feel like this matter should have never been here in the first place. The second that city staff didn't hear back, what we should have done is been working with the city manager to try to come up with a collaborative solution. That's also my opinion. But I'm happy to talk more, but I would love to make a motion just to recontinue this item. And just request that our city manager or city council reach out to their city council leadership so that we can come up with a collaborative problem that really benefits our residents. And then the second part of the motion would be also to request city staff to determine locations of signs to help with enforcement.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Can we hear the motion again? Did you?
Yes. So the first part of the motion is to request the Redondo Beach City Manager or City Council to reach out to Torrance City Council regarding the traffic route problem and effectively collaborate for a solution for both cities. And the second part is to request Redondo Beach City staff to determine locations of truck route signs to help with enforcement.
That was seconded. Now, do we need anything to take action about staff here? You're proposing this using Prospect and making those truck routes, and right?
I just want to be clear, we're not proposing anything. We're presenting ideas.
But this is an idea that might be considered. Is that? And we've had that conversation.
These streets are on the map because in a scenario where Torrance doesn't change their truck routes, and they have every legal right to designate their truck routes as they see fit, is that we would still have dead-end truck routes that would not be enforceable.
Absolutely. And if I may share some thoughts, in a perfect situation, we'd get Torrance to cut off their truck route at Anza from 190th South to Pacific Coast Highway. We'd have to work, and the only reason we're discussing any kind of concept on Prospect is to get the truck that's going westbound in Del Amo, force them legally by signage and other means to make a left and go south on Prospect. And then we should have a sign at Torrance Boulevard that says all trucks must make a left or a right on Torrance Boulevard. Torrance Boulevard is always going to be an entrance to our city. That needs to be our truck route. It's to the pier. It gets you to Pacific Coast Highway where you can then go north and south. The other entries, again, it's just addressing the situation as Torrance truck routes as they stand now enter our city. So again, I think we should focus on the motion in the second, but please understand why we're even entertaining the idea, because we don't want them coming down Diamond. We certainly don't want them going up and over Anita. That's already restricted anyway. But all these other routes, it's just really the best solution without being a great solution to the situation as it stands now. So yeah, let's focus more on the diplomacy between the cities. Also, I wanted to acknowledge John Perchelin, big fan of your photos. I appreciate the effort.
It's incredible.
I'm looking at all these photos and I'll just be very blunt. I see a U-Haul van that I might have rented in the neighborhood. I see a cement truck that was probably pouring a driveway somewhere, a lot of 2-axle trucks, some landscaping, definitely a couple of big trucks that have no business being there on any of these streets. But I understand how difficult this would be for police to enforce, because you can't, this is hundreds of photos that you have and they're not pulling. In fact, probably a lot of these can be there legally. And that's just hey, look, we all hate traffic. We all hate the extra cars. One thing we need to be mindful of too is when we adjust and make signs to go this way or that way, we put traffic on other streets. Pacific Coast Highway is terrible, and yet we might all agree, or most of us might agree, let's put all the trucks on PCH. But understand, if we don't allow a truck here and there to sneak through the neighborhood, which is not what I'm suggesting, but we know what happens, believe it or not, that might alleviate a little something, in the time being. So, but back to policy, I think this is a real test of our council as it stands now in their diplomacy to get along with our biggest neighbor to the east. So that's all. I just wanted to say that.
Signage is a requirement, but it's a Band-Aid to the wound, right?
Absolutely.
It's only going to do so much.
It's just to circumnavigate them over to Torrance. And I wouldn't even let them south of PV Boulevard past Toledo. That whole street section, no. They gotta go towards,
Well, we've got a motion on the floor and it's been seconded, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a roll call vote on that?
Commissioner Arata?
Can you repeat the motion for me?
Yes, the motion on the floor is to request the Redondo Beach City Manager and City Council to reach out to the Torrance City Council and Manager regarding the problem and effectively collaborate for a solution for both cities. So whatever that may be, it could be proposed this, it could be something else, we don't know, but I do want to provide them that opportunity to connect and come up with something that makes sense. And the second part of the motion is to request the staff to determine locations of signs to help with enforcement.
And that was second.
the only thing, if I might, friendly amendment is, let's identify the problem in the motion. Let's just call it Torrance dead-end truck routes.
All right. I'll accept your friendly amendment.
So that way, well, what problem? No, that problem.
And you,
Fair.
that says second, accept the friendly amendment, and so that's now the motion. We're talking about the dead-end truck routes. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Arata?
Well, let's do a roll call.
Aye. Commissioner Bajaj?
Yes.
Commissioner Funabashi?
Aye.
Commissioner Nafisi?
Aye.
Commissioner Sao?
Aye.
Chair Simpson?
Aye. Which now brings us to
One last thing, the offenders their names are on the trucks, by the way, in the photos. So most of them wouldn't be hard to track down. Okay.
J2, we've done that. Discussion of amendments to Redondo Beach Municipal Code, Section 3-7.12, and implementation of AB 413.
All right, so this next item, we'll just wait a second.
Sure.
Is everyone going?
Oh, that's it. That's the most people you'll ever see.
Sure.
Kids get the credit for coming.
For
to the
sure.
meeting.
For sure.
Sure, no problem.
That's
You just need a phone number or an email?
They take like the
See what they're
longest to do it today.
well much, so we didn't say.
You mean no one was here and care about the red curb on the, yeah, come on,
So
guys.
are we, Ready for J3?
Yeah, just making sure our liaison is available to join us here.
At Grub House? Oh, yeah. This is the first time I've seen the plans. Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Not their first one. I really do.
I don't know if I do.
I think they said they'll have. According to the site plan, it was only like 8. Because I'm saying people too could really get the next, like this might be interesting for them too. Let's see how it goes. Maybe, that would be.
Thank you.
Okay, go for it.
How's it going?
Hi, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, last Monday of every month.
All right. So RBMC 3-712.12 is our parking ordinance in the municipal code. And we're proposing some changes sort of in light of the recently passed State Bill AB 413. So AB 413, Assembly Bill 413, amends the state vehicle code to prohibit all parking and stopping within 20 feet of the approach of any marked or unmarked crosswalk. So that's a big one. This is a statewide bill. It technically does not require red curb or signage. The law went into effect this year, but citations from PD are only allowed starting in 2025 unless the area is marked with red curb and or signage typical to any other locations with red curb. This no parking zone can be reduced to 15 feet if a curb extension is present. The state vehicle code doesn't define exactly what a curb extension is, but we take it as something, a permanent concrete bulb out as we see on Grant Avenue, or, perhaps even a striped curb extension with vertical physical deterrence for people to park there. So as you can see at this picture down here, so one of the intersections along Diamond, there's a crosswalk markings here. That vehicle there is currently not allowed to park at that location. So the motivation behind this bill is traffic safety related. The whole concept is called daylighting. And as you can see in that graphic below, daylighting intersections improves the visibility of the other approaches and the crosswalks especially. For drivers to be able to see the crosswalks means that they're an increased likelihood of yielding to the pedestrian right-of-way in those crosswalks. This type of law is already in effect in 43 other states, so we'd be joining most of the country in having some sort of no parking at crosswalks law. I like to note that, there's a couple cities in the US, Hoboken, Jersey City, New Jersey. They're very dense cities, very urbanized cities, but with also a grid streets. They've actually achieved 0 traffic fatalities in 2022. They've cited this type of practice, daylighting intersections, making sure crosswalks have clear visibility as one of the big reasons why they achieved 0 fatalities in those cities. Now, of course, one of the sort of side effects of this law is less parking. And so we don't know exactly how many parking spaces will be lost within the city. Could be up to 4 spaces at every single intersection, although a lot of our intersections do. Yeah, it's 1 for each approach. So if the intersection has 4 approaches, it's just on the approach side, not the departure after you leave the intersection. But a lot of our intersections already have some sort of red curb or, provisions in place. The city and county of San Francisco, they estimate about 5% parking loss if they fully implement this law. So we expect a similar or perhaps slightly less decrease in the number of parking spaces. We totally understand the high demand for parking within the city, but for proven safety benefits like this, this is especially for vulnerable roadway users. This is from in our opinion a meaningful trade-off and something that's very commonplace in other states. And so from the staff level, we have a bit of a implementation and enforcement plan. We have the police department here who can answer any questions as well. But we were going to prioritize putting out red curb in school zone crosswalks, traffic signals, areas with a heavy pedestrian activity where there's multiple lanes on the street, areas that we hear resident feedback, that cars aren't stopping for them in crosswalks. That's where we're going to prioritize putting in red curb, and those locations can be enforced immediately. If there are locations where the installation of a curb extension would mean we can reduce that red curb zone by 5 feet. We will consider a curb extension, but know that a permanent curb extension does require a lot of funds, drainage considerations, and if we do put in the striped curb extension with the bollards, street sweeping will be quite challenging just in that corner. But that would be the trade-off to gain one parking space back. We also process red curb requests for driveways from residents, but I think with this new law, we really need to prioritize the red curb at intersections to focus the purpose of red curbs, chances for compliance, and the ease for enforcement. We talked to our RPPT parking enforcement unit to discuss any educational and enforcement strategies. So they're going to draft a flyer similar to that graphic on the previous slide that shows why parking at a crosswalk, blocking the visibility of a crosswalk, is illegal and not a good thing. So they're planning to create some sort of cardstock pamphlet to remind drivers. They're considering some other educational campaigns to help address these traffic safety issues. And then starting in 2025, they'll consider citations on a case-by-case basis, depending on the nature of the violation. And so I think we want to stop here and see if there's any questions on AB 413 and our proposed implementation plan before we talk about municipal code changes.
I had a couple of, it's an assembly bill, obviously, and if it's passed, making it California law.
It's been passed.
And it's been passed, so there's no questioning that. And I take it that within that law, it's mandated statewide. There's no exception that an individual city or municipality can make. And that's where it was almost a question of perhaps our city attorney. I'm not the one who immediately jumps up and says, let's fight it. But when it comes to the loss of parking, that's outrageous. We don't even really know. And when I came up with 8, yeah, maybe not all, but there's some one-way streets that are going to lose 2, maybe 5. But and I was really in a little bit of disbelief, even where every single 4-way stop is an unmarked crosswalk, right? So that's every 4-way intersection all over North Redondo, all over everywhere.
Yeah, you'll note that we didn't have all those intersections on our priority
The number
list.
is, it's astronomical.
If this has been passed as law, we've got to do it, right?
So in the law itself, there is a statement that says an agency can choose to shorten that distance if
we do bulb outs?
No. If an engineer signs off on a study that proves that the shorter distance is safer than.
Was that you?
Yes, that could mean.
You mean safer for the neighborhood so that the guy who can't find a place to park his car doesn't kill his wife when he gets home? You mean that kind of safety? Is that what we're talking about?
It requires a safety study and an engineering study to prove that a distance shorter than 20 feet or 15 feet with the curb extension. It's
going to be safer.
Can still provide, we have to provide that burden of proof, and that is not something that.
A lot of faith in you, man.
Yeah.
That is not something that I can put my stamp on.
It would be like a.
That's engineer talk, right?
It would be like a sightline study, something like that.
Which
20 feet is
reducing visibility is never going. I'm not even an engineer, and I could probably prove that more visibility is better. The next question I have, which I guess really is the data. I know we have had motor vehicle accidents that have killed pedestrians, but I have to ask the number of those that have been killed in Redondo Beach. How many do we think would be, like New Jersey, like they're saying that they're down to 0. So I presume they had some. But how many pedestrians using a crosswalk have been killed or injured as a result of visibility?
This isn't something we dug into specifically because we're just trying to find a way to implement this law and find sort of a prioritization plan. But I will say that this has been proven to address roadway safety.
Sure.
And those 2 cities I cited, Hoboken and Jersey City, there were other traffic calming, traffic safety measures that they put in, roundabouts, curb extensions, bicycle lanes, lane narrowing, they threw the whole gamut at it. But in all those reports, they did cite daylighting of intersections as one of those tools in the toolbox. And, it's hard to say what type of traffic safety tool could have addressed any particular collision or severe injury or fatality. But I think, it's prudent to consider everything in the toolbox to address traffic safety.
Sure, because I'm of the impression, without any empirical data, that somebody running a red light is more likely to hit and injure or kill a pedestrian than one slowing down to a stop sign and having a little greater visibility. And it amazes me how pedestrians who have the right of way, more often than not, will stop and wait, and they'll even wave you. I appreciate when they wave you through instead of just standing there, because then we don't know if they're going to, as a driver, we don't know if they're going to cross or not, right? And the only other thing I can put out there, and again, we started talking about our city council, talking to Torrance City Council. I mean, this all of a sudden, we got to talk to Al Maritsucci. And you know what I'm talking, maybe we got to go higher. And this is an assembly bill throughout the state of California.
Right.
How did we miss this? And can you imagine, what's it going to be like if we just remove 1,000 spaces all over? And that's just a good round number. It's probably more. You know what kind of backlash we're going to get from our...
Have we did a study? Yeah.
Gosh.
Have we studied that? Have you looked at plot maps?
We don't have exact number of spaces in the city of Redondo Beach because most of our spaces are unmarked. So it really depends on the size of vehicle, the parking style, how many spaces there are. That's why we cited, city and county of San Francisco is estimating a 5% loss. Now with San Francisco, they have probably a higher density of intersections and crosswalks than we do. Yeah. So because our intersection density, while fairly high for, as an urbanized part of Los Angeles, is probably a little bit lower than San Francisco. So I expect less than 5%. But 5% was the only number I could find, if any jurisdiction that has tried to estimate the number of parking spaces to be lost.
A question. I've been walking around some neighborhoods after I saw this, and there are in a number of places where I walk my dog, which is how I kind of survey the city. Red curb exists at these intersections. So if it's already there, you're not going to be removing substantial parking places. It seems. The majority of intersections that I come across, it seems to me, are already in compliance.
I don't know if the majority
Maybe
are.
not on the neighborhood street, the smaller streets, but on Grant Avenue and, I don't know. It seems to me a lot of red curb exists around.
Yeah, I'd venture to guess the biggest impact will be in the residential areas, and not all of those streets are impacted for parking. Many are. I'm trying to remember a number of intersections we have. I don't know if the chief's still here, but I think he knew. I'm going to way out on a limb, 1,500 to 2,000 would be my estimate for our city.
Of
intersections.
Intersections.
So if there's 4 per, that's 6,000 parking spaces potentially.
Some of them are already.
Correct. And even if they're not marked, they're maybe not used. So it's hard to put our finger on the exact amount. I think if we think about it as, essentially 2 per block, 1 at each end of the approaches per block, a typical block might handle 20 or 30 cars counting both sides. So we're looking at, small numbers. 5% is probably kind of the best estimate we can come up with at the moment. On the reduction that we would expect. And the state law says that these cars are now illegally parked in the absence of red curb.
Yeah, so how many residents even know that?
What we're really talking about is how is the city going to enforce it? And that's not a decision for us as engineers to make. That's a police department decision. But the decision that we will make is how do we roll out the additional red curb painting? How aggressive should we be with that? Where should we start? And so I think that's what Ryan is talking about here, that we're targeting these kind of high pedestrian use areas as an initial rollout to emphasize the fact that people shouldn't be parking in these places. And even though they can be cited after January 1st of 2025 without the red curb, if we paint this year, for instance, we could cite at those locations beginning as soon as the red paint is on.
my impression is that a number of these intersections, a substantial number of them, already have the red curb. So
That's
Well,
correct.
you know what, and I humbly disagree, only
Okay.
because I live in District 5 and can tell you that north of Artesia Boulevard, or even north of Grant, between Grant and Artesia up to Robinson, there are a significant number of four-way stops, and the cars in our congested neighborhood, park right up to that white limit line. And the other thing and we obviously talk about paint being the least expensive tool in the shed when it comes to the different recommendations that we make. And yet that's a considerable expense of time and effort, and never mind the cost of the paint, our Public Works Department going around all these, four-way intersections and painting that curb. So
paint is not a necessary part of enforcement beginning January 1st, 2025. So we don't have to paint, but we feel it emphasizes, it helps to train people that this is the new law, which many people will not.
Sure, and if it's not posted or other, what's a visitor to our city supposed to know? What can we expect them to know?
Well, if they're from California, they should know.
If they're from California,
Or 43 other states.
how many knew? I didn't know about.
But over the course of time, the intention is to be like a fire hydrant, right? Everyone knows you're not supposed to park within, 15 feet of a fire hydrant in each direction. So this is like the first step towards this long journey of institutional knowledge that drivers will be trained on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think what we're pointing out here with this bullet list of high priority areas is that, and I can't speak for how enforcement will work, but we could be on indefinite warnings in a lot of our smaller intersections in North Redondo where it's always stops, perhaps the acute need for crosswalk visibility isn't as high as traffic signals, school areas, visibility challenges.
Already on the books are laws about parking in a crosswalk or on top of the stop bar or places that we
but we're talking
currently,
15 feet. and
we
taking a
recognize
space.
that people park there and we judiciously enforce that to balance the need for parking with the need for things.
By prioritizing these, critical areas where schools, where there's a lot of pedestrian activity, we're being proactive about, addressing pedestrian safety, traffic safety. And then for, smaller intersections, we can take that on a case-by-case basis. If we hear, residents coming us to complaints about, drivers not stopping for them, then that's where we can take a look and apply that treatment to address the concern.
I think it's a sound methodology, what you've already listed as your sort of, way to establish your priority list.
The next part is actually related to this. Any more questions on AB 413 itself?
No, I don't.
Okay, so we're also, in companion to this, proposing changes to the no parking and all the parking zone language in the Redondo Beach Municipal Code. And I have the Word document pulled up. We can go through the track changes that I've outlined. Funny enough, our municipal code already prohibits parking within 25 to 30 feet of every intersection. So we're
just ignoring it.
We're ignoring it. And so city staff, we're proposing to just remove those sections and just go with the state law, 25 to 30 feet. We've also worked with the fire department to reduce the fire hydrant no parking zone. The California Vehicle Code states no parking within 15 feet of any fire hydrant. And they allow agencies, without a burden of proof, to reduce that distance. And so I talked to the fire department and they ran some tests, and in the attachment, one of the attachments for the administrative report for this item is their concurrence that they're fine with within 10 feet. So a total of 20 feet, a reduction of 10 feet in the fire hydrant law. So that's where we can, buy back a little bit of space. Perhaps that can buy back a space or two in certain locations. But that would also depend on us going out and striping red curb at all our fire hydrants to help with this. We're also proposing some language cleanup to the municipal code. There's some outdated language that talks about changing the color of curbs, adding red curbs. We're just going to remove all that and defer to council adopted policies that we've been practicing in recent years. adding flexibility for varying time limits at the colored curb zones to address, item 1 that we're talking about, to create some flexibility depending on the use. We're going to remove the taxi cab stands provision that very few people are using taxis at this point, and there's actually a fee associated with establishing a taxi cab stand, so we're just going to remove that and stay silent on that issue. There's a lot of gendered language in the municipal code as well. We're just going to remove all that and just go with the current terminology for these things. And so I would like to...
Good question, Ryan.
Yeah.
Since our municipal code is stricter than the state's proposed code changes, what has enforcement been like of that code?
So the way it reads in that code right now, as you can see on the screen here, is signed or marked. So that means red curbs and signed, that it compels the city manager to do this within 30 feet of intersection in the central traffic district and 25 feet everywhere else. So it does require red curb and signage, but that's how it reads in the municipal code. And that's why we're proposing to just take that out.
But it hasn't been enforced. I mean, it's...
If we could, go out to every intersection, paint 25 feet of red curb, and then the police would enforce the red curb as they do with any red curb in the city.
But you're not,
But we don't do that.
but you don't do that. So you're,
If you did, by adopting the state standard, we would be ineffectively adding parking spots.
Perhaps, yeah.
Okay.
so, okay.
So I guess the question is how, do we want to sort of slowly scroll through some of these changes?
This is still with the city attorney for their review, so rather than you as a body editing while the city attorney is reviewing and editing, it might be better for us to bring back a clean copy when the city attorney's done.
So after the city attorney has edited it, and then it comes to us, and we...
It doesn't have to.
I mean,
We're really
And
looking for general support or any objections to the things that we've spoken about. If you'd like another opportunity to see the changes in the actual
This would just
language.
be our views that would then be relayed to city council.
Eventually,
City
it would-
council enacts it.
That's correct.
Yes.
It wouldn't change without action of the city council. That's right.
So maybe I can
Now we're
just...
being asked to consider the concept.
The
that's being
concept,
proposed,
if
of each of the items.
we provided the specific language we presented to the city attorney's office for review to you, so you could identify maybe weaknesses in our thinking or objections to what we're proposing or questions about, have you thought about X, Y, or Z? That's really the point of our time with you tonight. We can bring it back. We don't have to bring it back if this is something that's, you're great with the concept and you trust the city attorney to get the language right, then that's fine too. We have a lot of options here.
So maybe I could just kind of give an overview of the changes by section. So this first section, designating no parking zones, we're going to remove those, specific feet and just defer to state law. We're going to remove the police and fire station prohibitions because we do have marked parking spaces in front of fire stations. We do have red curb in front of fire and police stations. It's not something we need to put in our municipal code. We're adding the fire hydrant language here within 10 feet. Same with this, traffic signal, we're just going to defer to state law on that. In the authorization for the city to establish no parking zones, it is very prescriptive of where the municipal agency we're allowed to add red curb. We're just going to generalize it to traffic congestion and or safety issues, and we can rely on other law to address these issues because it talks about bus zones, viaducts and bridges. If we just make the language general, that should suffice for our purposes. The next portion is just updating language to, accessibility standards, making sure that our blue curb accessible parking is in compliance with accessible standards. Just cleaning up language with commercial loading zones, making the language more flexible and clear to what these zones are for. In terms of time limits, we've added a section here to help give us that flexibility on, if posted with appropriate signage and or markings, whatever that time limit is for a white curb, a green curb, a yellow curb.
That's what you were referring to earlier on the,
Yes, because the current municipal code prescribes a specific time limit and specific times of day and days of the week, whereas these changes will address that and provide, there can still be a default mentioned in the municipal code, and it will still exist there, but in practice, any green, white, or yellow curb, we will be putting the days of the week and the time limits and the times of day. That will be the general practice. We do not want to create just, a plain zone and people have to guess exactly what the times are. So there's other language cleanup.
Right.
This section here with service changes is, the mechanism to change the color of curbs. There's a whole process here that we are no longer following. I don't recall what the official traffic manual is, but we've cleared out all this language and just said, in accordance with adopted policies relevant to the requested curb zone. So our red curb policy, our blue curb policy, things that we typically bring to the commission for review. Some more flexibility in this language here. Making more general the bus stop zones, it was very prescriptive, but we'll just defer to location-specific conditions, expected bus vehicle types, just keeping within sort of common sense staff purview to determine exactly how long a bus stop zone needs to be. Removing the taxi cab stands, and then maintaining the same language for the volunteers in policing. And so those are the changes we're proposing to the municipal code.
And so you're asking us for comments or further thoughts on it, or just a motion that would approve in general the plan that you're proposing? Is that?
Whatever motion, if you'd like to see it again, please make that clear. If you don't need to see it again, we can take it straight to the city council for consideration after the city attorney's done with their review.
Well, my suggestion would be that someone make a motion that it looks fine and we take it to the city council and we don't need to see it again. But I don't know if anyone.
If I might add, I feel the same, and I like the fact that you took the time now, and I can see in the presentation that there's a step-by-step implementation, prioritizing, around the fire department, and other key school zones, signalized intersections, places where that makes sense. And if up in the more congested or dense residential areas, that gets to it last. I guess obviously by January 1st, 25. That's where we, regardless of the red curb or not. But yeah, I think it's time to go back up to city council for them to approve it.
Yeah, and if you have questions about their enforcement plan, PD's here as well too.
Let's see if there's any public comment before we.
We should. Is there any public comment?
We do have one card for, actually, we've got Laura McMurran.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Laura McMorran. I'm a resident of District 1. And although this is state mandate, this is an excellent bill. This is an excellent law. I sat here today because while there is a tension, and I'm happy there's not vocal opposition between loss of street parking, pedestrian safety, bicyclist safety, as it's demonstrated in 43 other states, it's paramount. And we should unequivocally embrace this, advocate for it, and, it's going to take enforcement. I'd like to praise staff for preparing this issue early in the year. I'd also like to mention, I was reading the ordinance, and on page 3, it's referencing by vehicle code, letter D. My proclivity is to always be explicit. And so if there is a state numeric value, that it should be inserted here, because it educates the public as to what that standard is. As a companion to sightline issues, corner properties, I hope the city will look at corner properties and landscaping overgrowth, because that is also a factor. So while this is going on, maybe as there's education and citations, we can double up our and save and make property owners aware of the peril they're putting pedestrians and bicyclists in. So that's all for tonight. Thank you for your time and your service.
My name is Blake Richardson. I live down in the Riviera area, and specifically in Vista Del Mar and Camino de la Costa. And I can answer Commissioner Sal's question about enforcement. There is none. We have a situation where people aren't just parking up to that stop line. They're actually parking on the curve, and blocking the actual handicap ramps that go up and down off the sidewalk. And I don't know, about a year or so ago, a year and a half ago, I made an effort to contact parking enforcement specifically to address this issue. And they said they'd get to it if they could. They were understaffed. Today, on a separate issue, I was talking to parking enforcement over in the office, and I've been told that they're now up to full staffing. So maybe that's changed. But I mean, it just seems kind of silly to be debating about, 20 feet from a intersection when we, on a daily basis, have people parking right on it's hard to describe, but the corner itself.
Illegally.
Illegally. I mean, I'm sure
Flat
it's
out.
illegal, but we have no enforcement of that. So, we can do all the curb painting and everything in the world, but if no one's ever going to come by and write a ticket, then, I don't see what the point is. And I was also told that, it's kind of almost my responsibility to call and make a complaint before any enforcement will be done. And I don't really think that's up to the citizen. I mean, we have a parking enforcement department. They should be going around patrolling the streets and seeing these cars that are parked illegally and writing tickets. And it shouldn't be up to the citizens to have to call in and make complaints before we see any enforcement. And that's really all I had to say. It just seems like this whole issue is kind of moot if we're not going to do any enforcement of it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We
Anybody care to
don't
make
have
a
anyone-
motion here?
There's no one on Zoom at this time or that has raised their hand. We do have one e-comment that's in support. So
Okay.
anyone else can.
So the options are to elevate this to city attorney's office, they review it, move it to city council, or we can review again. Is that correct?
If you recommend that the staff move forward with the recommendations that we've shared with you to the city council, we'll go through our process, including the city attorney's office. Yeah.
So
Lauren, could you
I'll
pull up
make
the
a-
alternatives?
What?
Lauren, can you pull up?
Or just
Yeah.
putting the alternatives back up
Oh.
for you so you can see those.
I'll make a motion to recommend that city staff move forward with the city attorney's office. Oh, wait, I didn't see all this. Hold on. Okay, I'll recommend for the city council discussion and approval of staff's AB 413 implementation plan on the revision to the RBMC 3-7.12 as shown in attachments 1 and 2 of the March 25th, 2024 Public Works Administrative Report for this item.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. May we have a roll call?
Commissioner Arata? Commissioner Bajaj?
Yes.
Commissioner Funabashi?
Aye.
Commissioner Nafisi?
Aye.
Commissioner Sal?
Aye.
Chair Simpson?
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Red curb modification, Beryl Street, Maria to Paulina.
So this is the last item for tonight. This was a request that came from the Public Works Commission to look at. This is a general vicinity map of the area of Beryl Street with Maria to the coastal side, west side, and Paulina to the east. Here are the proposed changes to the curbs. There's currently a whole long stretch of red curb where this green and red is. All these are highlighted here are also all red as well. There isn't a lot of history on why all these sections of curb are red. Unfortunately, our aerial imagery doesn't show the most recent repaving of Beryl Street, but nowadays the bicycle lanes are a little wider, the lanes are a little bit narrower, and so this, it's a good reason to revisit the red curbs on the street. Looks like they were all to serve one driveway here and there. And also in light of AB 413, trying to prioritize the usage of red curb at the locations where it's most critical, intersections, alleyways, not so much on each individual's driveway. So we're gonna, maintain some level of red curb at the alleyway here. There's about 25 feet of space between the alley and this driveway here that's just not worth adding a space back here. But we're considering about 4 additional spaces, keeping the 20 feet of red curb as required at Barrow and Paulina. And then on the other side of the street, there's about, I think, 90 feet of red curb to service one house. So we're proposing to remove the majority of that and provide 4 additional spaces. I think from an overall picture is that when you are providing additional parking in this area, when it feels like this is a good place to park a car, people will feel less likely the need to park in a red curb at an intersection where we truly need that visibility. So that's sort of our overall goal of trying to balance the needs, is to prioritize those red curbs at the intersections. And hopefully this will make things easier to enforce, because an area like this, probably won't get as much attention in terms of enforcement as compared to an intersection. So happy to answer any questions. Oh, and the last thing is we provided noticing to all 4 houses along this affected block per the red curb policy.
Any feedback?
No, we did not hear any.
So you're picking up how many parking? You get 7?
Total 8.
Looks like 4 plus 4, yeah.
Oh, 4. Misread that, yes.
And we also actually gained back another space on Barrel, just outside the zone, with our, every 2-year renewal of blue curb spaces. So if we don't hear a response back on the renewal for the accessible parking spaces, those spaces get turned back over to the general public. So we recently reverted one of those spaces here as well. But that's outside of this item.
Okay, no, I wouldn't. Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. All right.
I think this is great. Thank you so much for bringing it back. I know last year, a lot of the residents came down when they were complaining about the parking situation on Maria. So I think this will help allow teachers and staff for the Barrel Elementary School over there kind of continue parking down there instead of on the residential streets. That seems to be a pretty common feedback, I think, for the residents, that they're taking up the parking. So I think just even 8 in a very tiny school of 30 teachers will be very helpful.
Yeah.
And here are the alternatives available.
Well, I'll make a motion to proceed with the staff recommendation to remove the red curbs as shown. Oh, yeah, thank you. If there's any public comment.
Is there any public comment? Is there any online comment?
Let me just double check. No one's raised their hand online, and we do not have any e-comments at this time.
Okay.
All right, so with that, I will continue with my motion on the floor, so.
All right.
I'll go ahead
We
and
get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Sounds good. Commissioner Arata?
Aye.
Commissioner Bajaj?
Yes.
Commissioner Funabashi?
Aye.
Commissioner Nafisi?
I want to say yes, but I think I have to abstain because I live within 500 feet, right? Okay, I abstain.
That's right, you do,
That's fair.
Commissioner Zhao?
Aye.
Chair Simpson?
Aye. Anything we can do to get more parking spaces back? Motion carries. Well, that brings us to item K, which is member items and referrals to staff.
I do.
Yes, Commissioner Rada.
Well, I'd like to ask and make a recommendation, coming off of this recommendation, to remove some of the red curbs that, since you're going to be red curbing from the park, you're going to be red curbing as the state recommended in the local area. I'd like to ask that you go through the densely populated neighborhoods and go down the streets and assess where there's red curb, where there shouldn't be, that are, catering to whatever neighbor asked for it.
For example, in the avenues in South Redondo, I see a lot of red curbs that don't necessarily need to be there. As far as North Redondo, I'm not quite sure. I'm sure that some of the North Redondo residents would like to request the same, but yeah, something I'd like to request.
Do you have any streets in mind, or are you just saying?
Well, I mean, you could start with the avenues, like Avenue.
I think, you know,
Avenue, like Avenue G is really densely populated, and there's a lot of red curb or some red curb that I feel was just to cater to the certain addresses. Prospect, I mean, we've already been down Prospect with the whole church, but I feel like there's maybe some red on Prospect that doesn't necessarily have to be red.
I think we can certainly address specific locations that you refer us to. For us to go through the entire city to document the red curb will take up a lot of resources. I think we may inadvertently get to, notice some of it when we're doing our AB 413 implementation.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think we would like to, prioritize where we need to comply with state law before we remove or propose removing sections that, we're not mandated by a certain law to remove red curb.
Yeah, we can certainly keep an eye out for that. We have so many installations of red curb at the request of residents that's either come to this body or we've been able to do it at a staff level. I don't think we'd want to just overturn those and strip off the red paint without some kind of a process, right? So,
Right. Well, I was just thinking,
yeah,
like, I don't know.
you're asking us to look for places where it may not be needed.
Right.
And we can reduce red curb and encourage parking. That will involve some research on our part to figure out why it was there in the first place and some outreach. So the best I think we can promise is that we'll get to that in our due process, but if that's direction to make a priority for staff time, then we'd probably want to elevate that to council, city manager, and giving us that direction because they've given us other priorities already.
Oh, yeah, no,
So-
I know.
So, yeah, thank you
I just
for
have a
clarifying.
question, Commissioner Funabashi. When they did red curb, like areas throughout Redondo, did they do it based on line of sight, or was it done on request, or was it always on line of sight?
Just off the top of my head, I would add, and I think staff would, it's often a suggestion from staff when we're trying to improve sight lines. And in fact, that is one of the tools in the shed, if you will, to improve sight lines, to remove cars close to an intersection. And the only way to do that is with red curb. So we as a commission have often recommended that as part of maybe a few other measures with a given intersection that's been troublesome with sight lines.
Sometimes a driveway entry.
Yeah, so Meyer Lane.
Over by Starbucks, I think.
Yeah, Meyer Lane is probably a good example where past staff and past commissions, past council members have provided a lot of red curb for specific driveways, applying those rules at driveways. And with everything, there's a balance, Of course, you could get 100% visibility if you had no parking whatsoever. But what we're hearing from the state is now we have to do it at intersections. And so we're trying to strike a balance.
Commissioner Bajaj.
Yeah, one referral to staff. When you're driving down westbound on Anita and then it turns into Redondo, and as you're approaching like Harbor Drive, or I guess Hermosa Ave at that point, as you're driving down past the last stop sign, I think it's at Monterey. Anyone know?
Yeah, I think that's right.
There's a Redondo Beach, like a fixed sign in the median, right? It's like a
monument sign?
A monument style sign, yeah. And the shrubs have grown like to where it's almost completely obstructing the sign. So it'd be nice if, the beauty of that sign could be visible again, so.
In the median on Redondo?
In the median, if you're driving westbound
right?
on Redondo,
Okay,
in the
got it.
median, there's a monument sign, but there's been some planted foliage that right in front of it, and it's gotten to the point where it completely obstructs it.
Happy to send this over to Public Works, and I always make the reminder, we have Access Redondo for just that kind of reason.
I gotta remember that.
You guys are like crazy ninja fast. I'm like, every time I send something, I'm like, like, I just sent it. It's
Yeah,
crazy. Like, who's
it's-
monitoring that?
It's so
There's
good.
some crazy ninja out there doing
goes-
stuff so fast. It's faster than an email at this point.
It
I have
really is.
determined that.
It really is.
It works.
It is
and Scott's
faster
rate
than
is
an email.
fantastic.
That's why I keep bringing it up, because I'm slower than it is, so you're going to get.
For sure. I mean, no offense, but like some of these things, I'm like, I just sent that in.
Okay.
I will say that the logo may change, the city logo may change, so.
Yeah, we are, I mean, we can still cut bushes, but in terms of replacing these things, we're dragging our feet a little bit.
It's not far from the yard.
For the
either.
logo
They can
discussion
go.
to.
Well,
reach
if you're driving
fruition.
down there, so many people think it's Hermosa Beach when you get there because, the north side of the street is Hermosa, but it's really nice to see it that it's
You bet.
Redondo. So have that monument sign nice and visible would be great.
I didn't have a referral as much as just a question and as concise in regards to the dredging project at the harbor. I know it was delayed due to some issues with the barge. And if I could just get a timeline as you see it from the city's
What
perspective.
they've told us is that, just for everybody's benefit, the generator on the dredge broke, failed, whatever, had to be replaced. So they pulled the entire barge out somewhere where they could fix it. That barge had plans to go to Alaska for a project they have upcoming. So they've decided rather than bring it back to us and delay their Alaska trip, they're going to send that one to Alaska after they fix it and bring another one down from Northern California. It should be en route. They're supposed to start the first week in April. So I think that could be as early as Monday or Tuesday. But I haven't, that was an update I had last week, so I haven't checked this week to see where they are. They anticipate probably 3 more weeks, plus or minus, if they get started next week and weather conditions permitting. So yeah, we're getting close to the end of it, but we do have some more work to go.
So there's not a hardline date that first week of April when it's actually going to be here and start. We have a
They
range.
told, I think Monday is April 1st. I think they told me April 2nd they would begin dredging.
So they're shooting for the second.
Last thing I've heard from them, but I didn't check today, so.
And then the 2 to 3 weeks is from now or start?
No, once they get started.
Once they get started on the second, say best is, then we've got about 2 to 3 weeks.
Probably 3 is closer. I know we've done about 3, and then they told us about 6 weeks in the beginning. So I would say, let's call it 3. I think they are going to try and, this is again, not in writing, but they're going to try and work up by the yacht club to work with the opening day calendar that you guys have. I don't know exactly how that's worked out. I've not been involved in those conversations, but I know that is very much on our minds as staff, trying to get them coordinated. Technically, it's difficult to get in there first before they clear out all the other stuff that's on the way to those kind of northwestmost corner of the marina.
Okay.
So I think they're going to do their very best to get your docks in.
But as long as it's been communicated and everyone's saying, hey, we're going to do the best we can.
My project manager, Geraldine, is speaking with the Commodore at the yacht club on just that topic.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ofisi.
I know this is like kind of shocking and you're probably going to be really disappointed, but I have no referrals for you today. And this is partially because you've followed up on the 17,000 that I've given you in the past. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. But no referrals
I'm
today.
going to take that as a compliment.
Yes, it is a compliment. Ryan is on it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner So, any referrals?
Quick question on street noise. Before you guys, like on 190th and different areas, you had like the big signs, the blinking signs that say, hey, slow down, we're going to enforce regarding like street noise.
The radar feedback signs?
Radar feedback signs.
For speed limits or noise?
Noise.
If you're referring to noise, I think police have put out some trailers that show, exhaust enforcement is in effect. So that's under the control of the police department. We've, I think, once or twice gotten a request from the resident to do noise enforcement. We'll send that over to PD, but that's generally within their purview.
Gotcha.
Any other referrals to staff? I confess I have nothing to refer.
Just a heads up on our next meeting in April, we annually do a joint meeting with the Finance Commission, which we didn't do last year for reasons that I'm not entirely clear of, but the city manager has asked us to combine those meetings again this year. So that's the plan today. Not saying that couldn't change,
We've
but
done them, sometimes they come before we do and do their other business, and then we have a joint, and then we.
Right, the exact format is not clear yet to me how we're going to do that. So we need a couple more conversations with their liaison and what they need to do.
It'll be
on the CIP, so we're entering into the budget season now. We're beginning to talk about that in very early stages with the city council. On staff, we're gathering the recommendations for CIP projects, that kind of thing. So we're beginning that season. So the first our meeting in April will be to kind of present what we've accomplished this year, what's left to be done, what's still on the books, and maybe some other things we're thinking about for the future.
Anything else on the agenda? Probably not.
Probably, typically when we have a joint meeting like that, we just keep it to common items. If there's a consent, something or other that may go, come to you as a consent item.
You won't be hearing too much from me.
Try and give Ryan a break this next month.
We also have a subcommittee report that's in the works, right? We probably will get that.
Yeah, we have actually have a meeting set up this week to discuss. It's taken us a while to capture Ted because he's here kind of limited time. Wednesday's actually his probably last working day, but I made him stay for the meeting. So
Sure, he's thrilled.
so cake and coffee come at 3:00, so we got him in at 1, so he doesn't have to stay after cake and coffee anyway. But yeah, I did want his expertise because he is very much more knowledgeable than I am at this point about landscaping issues in particular.
And we would probably take that up in May.
Yeah, so that's probably something that will come back in May. Our conversation this week will include public works staff as well as somebody from the planning staff to just advise on what kind of is already required in a planning application and what we might consider adding in terms of pollinator species and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you for setting that up.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
So anything else? Probably not. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
May I just make an announcement for all of you? You're all welcome and invited tomorrow at 3:00 in our staff lounge to celebrate Ted's retirement, cake and coffee kind of a thing.
What time, I'm sorry, is it?
3:00 tomorrow.
Wednesday or Tuesday?
I'm sorry, today's Monday. I'm usually here on Tuesday nights, so yeah, 3:00 on Wednesday. Thank you. Don't come tomorrow. I might have to buy you a cake and coffee on my own.
Where is it going to be?
In the staff lounge, which is, if you can get to the front door where the city clerk sits, that somebody can direct you.
City clerk's, that's the, yeah.
At 3:00.
3:00 on Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Nice.
Midwalk Social
And just one more announcement, we are now on our city emails only. So if you have any issues with your city email, please let me know and I'll get you in touch with the city clerk. But at this point, we're going to do all communication through your city emails from here on out. So, thank you.
Okay, can we
Thanks,
get a
I'll get
motion
you
to adjourn?
set
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. All right.
Adjourned.